On the edge of a remote village, where the snow never seemed to stop falling, there stood an old, decaying house. It had been abandoned for decades, its windows boarded up, its roof sagging under the weight of years of neglect. The locals whispered about it, exchanging stories of the strange events that had once plagued the place, events that led to its abandonment. It was on a bitterly cold winter night that Sarah, a curious young woman with a taste for adventure, found herself standing before the house. She had heard the rumors, but she was determined to uncover the truth. Wrapped in a thick scarf and coat, she had ventured out into the thick, swirling snow, her footsteps crunching in the frozen silence as she made her way toward the eerie structure. As she approached the house, she felt a strange sensation, like a pressure in the air, as though the very atmosphere had grown heavier. The wind howled around her, cutting through her layers of clothing, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Despite the gnawing unease in her gut, Sarah pushed open the creaky, frost-covered gate and stepped onto the snow-covered porch. The door to the house stood ajar, as if inviting her in. She hesitated for a moment, her breath forming clouds of vapor in the freezing air, but then she gathered her courage and entered. Inside, the air was stale, and the house smelled of mildew and decay. Her footsteps echoed loudly on the wooden floorboards as she explored the rooms, each one more dilapidated than the last. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, the furniture was coated in a thick layer of dust, and the air was eerily still, except for the occasional creak of the house settling in the cold. She made her way to the stairs, drawn by an odd compulsion. The upper floor seemed untouched by time, as though no one had set foot there in years. The stairwell was shrouded in darkness, and Sarah's flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. At the top of the stairs, she found a long hallway. The door to the first room on the left was cracked open, and she pushed it slowly, the hinges groaning in protest. The room beyond was empty, save for a large, ornate mirror standing against the far wall. The mirror was old, its frame intricately carved with symbols she couldn't understand. But what made her heart race was the reflection it showed. In the glass, she could see a figure standing behind her, pale, with hollow eyes and a twisted, skeletal grin. Sarah spun around, her pulse pounding in her ears, but there was no one there. The room was empty, save for her own trembling form. Her breath caught in her throat as she turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, but it was closer now, its face twisted into an expression of malice. The reflection began to move, its hands reaching out, pressing against the glass as if trying to break through. Sarah stepped back, her heart hammering in her chest. But no matter how far she retreated, the figure in the mirror kept coming, its cold, bony fingers nearly touching the surface. With a scream, Sarah turned and fled down the hallway, her legs shaking as she ran. She didn't dare look back, but she could feel the presence of the thing chasing her, the cold air growing heavier with each step. She reached the staircase and stumbled down, her hands trembling as she gripped the railing. When she finally burst through the front door and into the freezing night, she thought she was safe. But as she turned to look back at the house, her blood ran cold. The figure from the mirror was standing in the window, watching her with those hollow eyes, its twisted grin stretching wider with every passing second. Sarah ran without looking back, the snow biting at her face as she fled through the night. But no matter how far she went, she couldn't shake the feeling that the thing from the mirror was still out there, waiting, watching, and following her into the darkness.